In my last video, I gave a brief introduction to the use of the Sumo text editor for managing calls to theorem proving and getting proofs and taking a look at those results. In this video, I want to look briefly at some of the simpler functions that the Sumo text editor supports. So here I have a file called Computing Brands that was developed recently to support some customer service applications. And I can just briefly go over. The first thing you notice is that everything's nicely color-coded. So we have several different colors to highlight different important parts of the statements in a Sumo-based file. A few of the most fundamental relationships, such as the subclass relationship or the instance relationship. So these say, respectively, that one entity is a kind of something else, a subclass of it, or that one entity is a particular individual of that type for the instance relationship. We also highlight the 7 logical operators that are in the SUMOjEdit language that is used for creating Sumo definitions. The implication or if-then sign, existential quantification, and or not, for all, and then rarely used, there's also the by implication. We highlight variables so that, for example, if you make a mistake and you leave out the question mark that denotes a variable, you'll see right away that it's a different color, and so that can help to catch errors during editing right away. Obviously, we do parentheses balancing, so you can see the highlighting of parentheses like most editors do. Highlight in a different color comments, part of the documentation. And a few other predicates get their own colors. So term format and documentation, these are relationships that are essentially linguistic documentation. For the formal theory. They don't really get used in theorem proving, and we highlight them. So another thing that you can see is that everything, it looks fairly nicely indented, so standard Lisp pretty printing format. So if, for example, you have some sort of odd formatting, I mean, I guess more typically I see people occasionally doing things like this. They want to put the negation on the same line. So you can get the standard formatting for KIF just by selecting format axioms, and it'll take care of that for you, especially for beginners. That really helps for readability if you're not used to the normal conventions. So let's also take a look. We've looked at format errors. Go-to definition is another one. So here we have a definition for phishing. So trying to find somebody's personal information to compromise their account in some way. So let's just select a particular term, phishing. Then we can go up to the plugin menu and go to definition, and then the cursor is repositioned right up at top of the definition of phishing. Now I should say that there is an issue in logic that a term like phishing doesn't have a definition in the same way that something like isosceles triangle does. There isn't really a necessary and sufficient set of conditions for a human construct like phishing that isn't sort of abstract mathematical thing. So the editor makes a best guess. It'll look at, in turn, a few predicates on that particular term that you've highlighted, subclass or instance, as well as documentation. For relations, it can look for range or range subclass. Those are the argument type definitions of a relationship. So it makes a good guess, and it's usually right, and it will also jump between files if you have other files loaded to find that right definition. So that's fairly helpful. Another useful thing is the notion of browsing a term in the Sigma browser. So the browser obviously is just read-only, but it has all the hyperlinks in it, and so it can be a very nice environment for helping you understand theories. So let's just do that. We'll look at communication, and we'll go browse the term in Sigma, and then it will bring it up. I've got it actually here over in another window. So let's bring it over, and you can just see here we are at sigmaontologyportal.org browsing the term communication. Let me just scale this down so that it actually fits in the video a little bit better. And here we can see that we've got all of the WordNet, SenseNet, VerbNet terms that all are related to communication. We get translations of the documentation into multiple languages, including Chinese as well as English. We get a lot of fundamental definitions. So this is just the standard browser presentation of the term communication and all the axioms that are already defined in Sumo on that. So another helpful way to kind of see what you've got. All right, and then in addition to browsing a term, we focused in the last video on querying on highlighted expressions. So that's the call to theorem proving. So there's one other thing we haven't taken a look at, and that's this, checking for SUMOjEdit errors. So this will actually check a whole wide range of errors in the system on the particular file, and it'll pop up an error list showing you what they are. Now, we've got a publication coming out shortly that goes into these in detail. It really covers a wide range of things. It'll catch argument type restriction violations on relations. It'll obviously catch syntax errors or violations of the BNF grammar that's defined for SUMOjEdit. It'll also give you a lot of warnings. For example, a common error is using a variable only once in an axiom. Now, that's not always an error. There could be a argument to a relation that you simply don't care about, so it has to appear there, but it never gets analyzed. So let's just take a look at one of these. So here we see P1 and P2. To say that this is a warning that often is indicative of a problem. You need to spend some time figuring out whether in fact it's a real error or if it's just a sort of a don't care value. And there are lots of errors that the system can catch for you. So I hope this was a reasonable summary or introduction to this editor. It's all available for free on GitHub at Ontology Portal, github.com/Ontology Portal. And the editor is the SUMOjEdit product, and then you'd also download all of the Sumo project as well as the Sigma key system that is the sort of foundation of all the code that runs under the editor. So I hope you found this helpful and eager for your feedback. Thanks very much.